Hey there, it's Leslie with Leslie's Cookies and Treats, and today I'm making the first Garfield cookie of this 2 cookie set. I made these cookies just for me, and I started by finding an image on the internet that I wanted to use, and I projected that image onto my cookie with a Pico projector. And now I'm just going to trace around that image with black royal icing in about a 25-second consistency. I'm using a size 0 tip here, and it is a small tip, extremely small, and so the icing is curling a little bit. I probably needed to switch out to a bigger tip, but I persevered. But I am going to have to stop quite a few times and uh, redo some lines because it curled as I was piping. And again, it would have been easier if I would have just had a bigger tip. But this cookie is only about 3 inches and the image is pretty detailed, so I wanted to have a small tip for the outline so that I could make sure to capture all of the details I wanted to capture. And I'll speed up the video for the rest of the outline because you get the idea. And one other thing to mention, as I'm piping this outline, because I'm using a detail consistency royal icing, I can move the icing around with my scribe or even with the dampened paintbrush to get it where I want it. So if I don't pipe it perfectly in place, I can move it around. And if I wasn't having such hard time with the icing and it twisting and curling as it came out of the piping tip, I would hold it up in the air a little bit more, and so I could drop the line where I wanted without having the tip of the bag in my way so I could see what I was doing better. Also, as I'm finishing outlining Garfield here, I should tell you I took a little creative license with the design that I found on the internet and changed the hamburger that he was calling with his remote control into a big cookie jar because, I'm all about cookies. And so we've finished the outline, and now I'm just going to start piping in all of the little areas. I'm going to start with the eyes and just put in a dot of white. All of my icing consistencies are a little bit stiffer, about a 20-second consistency because these areas are all so small and I'm trying to avoid craters. So I'm going to pipe them in. I don't really have to wait for them to dry because the black outline will keep everything separated. And I'm going to be careful not to go over my black outline as I'm piping. So I'm going to be using my scribe a lot to smooth the icing out and to get it out to the edges. And that's really all there is to it when you are decorating a detailed cookie like this, is just filling in the different sections. If they're touching each other, let them dry before you go on and pipe the section that's next to it, unless you want it to be a wet on wet effect and have a smooth surface. And then just use your scribe or your toothpick to settle the icing down and get it out to the edges. And because a lot of the areas on this cookie are small, that is going to have a tendency to crater. And because of that, you are going to want to stop and put it in front of a fan or in a dehydrator. I already am starting to get some craters here in Garfield's cheek, so I added some icing. It hasn't completely dried yet, and I'm just using an up and down motion with my scribe to fill that area in. And hopefully I can get it all to blend back together because it hasn't dried yet, and the up and down motion with the scribe will help it all settle together. And going back to filling in his body, I put the icing right back into the tail where I had left off and began piping in more icing there, and I'll just use my scribe again in an up and down motion to blend it all together. And if I happen to go over the black lines anywhere, I can just use a dampened paintbrush to wipe the icing away where it covers the black lines. Now going back to craters, some of the things you can do to avoid craters would be to poke little holes in the white icing before you begin piping Garfield. I haven't found that that works for me, but it's worth a try. I didn't do it on this cookie. Maybe I'll try it on the next one. And I also can put a little squiggle of icing in first, and then I can pipe over the top of that squiggle of icing to give it some extra puff and hopefully again prevent craters. Here I'm scraping off all of the icing on his leg and his foot because it did crater and it was getting too dry to fix. I could fix it after it had already dried, but I'm in the middle of doing this cookie and I just want it to be finished when I'm done, and I didn't want to have to go back later and repair it. So I scraped it all off. I've already got the icing out. I'm here. I might as well. And I reflooded in this little area. So if I had stopped and put this cookie aside to dry in front of a fan for 5 or 10 minutes after flooding each of these areas, that would have also helped prevent the craters, but I didn't. I just kept working on it as a solid cookie. without stopping. I didn't have other cookies to work on in between. I'm just doing this Garfield cookie and one other Garfield cookie today. So I didn't want to put it aside to dry and then come back later. I didn't have anything else to do while I was waiting for it to dry. So I was kind of impatient, and that caused me to have to deal with fixing some areas. But I wanted to show you here that that could be done. And taking the time to do that was worth it in the end because I came out with a much better Garfield. And for his nose, it's just such a small area that I just put a dab of the pink icing on my scribe and then poked it into the hole for the nose. So I chose to make the Garfield cookies today just for fun. I'm just playing. And I did that for me because as a kid, I always loved Garfield growing up. And it's just fun for me to do this. So I'm making the Garfield cookies, and I also wanted it to have something to do with cookies because that's my other love. There's nothing better than decorating cookies. It really is relaxing and kind of therapeutic in a way. It's my happy place for sure. So I wanted to decorate these cookies and just have fun with a character that I loved as a child growing up. And going back to his nose, I added another bead of icing because it wasn't very full and I wanted it to be a little fuller. So I just piped a bead right on top of the nose I had already placed. And then I flooded in the cookie jar, but I wanted to let you know that I'm going to scrape it all off camera because it does crater, and pipe it in again. Here you can see it's all scraped off. And I went ahead and added the wheels and the antenna, and then I'm going to reflood that. And then the cookie will be dry. Once it completely dried, I went back in and used an edible marker to add in the eyeballs and his stripes, of course, and pipe the word cookies and some little dots around the antenna. I also gave it a little bit of shading under his feet. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for part 2 where I'll make the other Garfield cookie. Drop me a note in the comments and let me know what your favorite cartoon or comic was and what cookie you'd like to see me do next. Thank you so much for watching. If you stuck with me to the end, I really appreciate your support. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. I have new cookie tutorials every day.